My name is Fatima. I was born in a small village where the people were many, but they were unaware of the value of education. Still, I managed to get an education up to the 8th grade. There were only two classes in our area, the prosperous and the poor. Unfortunately, I belonged to the second class. Amr, my cousin, had a great desire to study and progress. Because of his passion, he used to walk 2 miles every day to go to school since the boys' high school was that far. By the grace of God, he completed his matriculation. In our village, it was difficult for someone who had completed their matriculation to get a job. But Ahmer had very high dreams. He wanted to get into college. My engagement to Ahmer had been decided since childhood, and now the time had come for us to be married. In the elders' view, even though there might not be a job available for him, Amr was young, strong, and could work hard. He could cut wood from the forest, work with an axe, and earn a living in any way. Whenever a boy in our village became capable of earning with his strength, they would be married off, even if the girl was only 15 years old. Amr, though, was 17 and I was 14. But according to our elders, our marriage was to happen now. Amr's father asked him to get married, but he refused. When his father asked why, he said, "I want to go to the city to study. How will I get the money to go there? I will work and earn in the city." Amr explained, "Working in a foreign city, managing housing, and earning a living is not easy. Whatever I earn will be spent on accommodation and food. How will I pay for my educational expenses?" He said, "You leave this to me. Just give me permission, and I want to go to a big city to get an education." His father thought for a moment and said, "All right, but on one condition. If you marry your fiancée Fatima, then I will allow you to go." For the sake of his education, Amr accepted the condition, but my parents were not willing. They said, once married, Amr cannot take Fatima to the city. Who knows what the situation there will be like? Amr's father suggested, "Okay, then we will just perform the nikah and delay the rukhsati marriage ceremony for a year or two." In our culture, once the nikah is done, the rukhsati is usually done together. Amr had the opportunity to speak to me in private, and he shared his problem with me. He said, "Fatima, if you support me, I can achieve great things. Please talk to your parents. Let them agree to the nikah and rukhsati, and after that, you can stay in your parents' home or with your in-laws. I will come to visit you every 6 or 7 months. I will finish my BA. My dream can only come true with your help." I loved Amr very much, so I promised him that I would support him. Once the marriage process was over, I would convince my parents. My mother couldn't refuse me. After the marriage 15 days later, I spoke to my mother and asked her to let my husband go to Lahore. I told her that labor work was easily available there, and Amr could work and study. Life would improve for us. I was a new bride, and no one agreed with the idea that my husband would leave me and go so far. Everyone said, "Why go that far when work can be found here from the contractor of the jungle?" However, after much insistence, my parents gave their consent. They sent me back to my parents' home, and Amr, following his dreams, left for Lahore. Before leaving, Amr promised me that he would keep me informed about his situation through letters and stay in touch. He did just that, and a week after he left, I received his first letter. It said, "My dear Fatima, may you be safe. I have reached Lahore in good health. I went to a factory with a friend where work is available, but the working hours are 10 hours long. In this situation, I will neither be able to join college nor continue my education. So I did not take the factory job. I will look for part-time work in the evening. Everything else is fine. I will write again about the situation later. For now, I am staying with a friend who is from Faisalabad." I couldn't arrange accommodation for myself immediately, was written in the next letter. "I have rented a room in a moderately priced area. The landlord leaves for his business in the morning, and his wife stays at home. She is a kind-hearted, compassionate woman. Being a stranger, she insists on giving me 2 meals a day, telling me that as long as I don't find a job, I can eat at their house. She says, 'We have everything provided by God. There's no need for you to worry.' May God bless this woman. She is very generous." In the next letter, there was some concern. My dear Ahmer wrote, "I'm very worried these days. Everything seems fine, but there's one thing bothering me. The landlord's wife, Asiya, is becoming too kind. Her husband leaves at 9 in the morning and returns at midnight, but I return at 3 a.m. The good news is that I've gotten admission to college. The college is nearby. The admission fee was also paid by this woman. I borrowed money from her to pay for the admission, and she told me, "Don't let the academic year go to waste. Take admission." She is quite generous, but for some reason, now I feel uneasy. She comes to me regularly, well-dressed, and sometimes wears strange clothes. Perhaps in the city, people don't pay much attention to this, but as villagers, we don't consider such things appropriate. I try not to look at her, but it's hard. I feel like advising Asia, don't come to me dressed like this, but I don't have the courage, as she has been so kind to me. No appropriate job has come up yet. Please pray that I get one soon. I brought some savings, but that has been spent on rent and books. Now I'm left with very little money, but I trust in God's mercy, and I believe that a solution will come soon. 15 days later, I received a letter from Amr. He wrote, "Fatima, what can I say? I am trapped in a real mess. Asia has completely shocked me. Whenever I come home, she brings food to my room and then stays so long that she doesn't want to leave. She talks about movies and makes all sorts of excuses. Her conversations make me feel embarrassed, and I start feeling shy. But what can I do? I need a place to stay. If I refuse her, I don't know what might happen. I can't leave the house because in a big city like Lahore, finding accommodation is a huge problem. This issue has become so serious that you can't even imagine." After reading Amer's letters, I was becoming anxious, but I kept encouraging him not to lose hope. I advised him not to abandon his studies out of fear, and I reassured him that no matter what, he should not give up. "You should bear with this woman's kindness," I wrote. "After all, Allah has softened her heart for you, and you should make use of this opportunity. Otherwise, you will be left struggling. Asia's behavior might be a result of her loneliness. She has no children and spends most of the time alone. So she might just want to talk to someone. I have complete trust in your love for me, and that's why I don't doubt your actions. But if it were anyone else, I might have suspected them. Keep your focus on your studies and don't leave this opportunity in Lahore. Bear with Asia's words. She might have a different temperament. Every person has their own nature." Eventually, one day I received a letter that left me shocked. It said, "My dear Fatima, forgive me. Though I had no fault in this matter, the devil had been working behind Asia for some time. Eventually, she tricked me, and I can't describe the treatment she gave me. Just understand that she led me into a pit, and in the process, she fell into the fire of sin herself. I tried to stay away from her, but I am human, and humans are prone to error." Reading this letter, I was drenched in sweat. My hands and feet went cold. I sat still in one place for a long time, clutching the letter tightly in my hand. Then, fearing that someone else in the house might read it, I threw the poisonous letter into the burning stove. This is what I wrote to my dear Ihmer. "Whatever happened, happened. Seek forgiveness from Allah and leave their house immediately. Find another place to stay. Don't let yourself fall into the depths of sin. The pit of sin is like the blazing fire of hell. I trust in you that you will come out of this mess. I am deeply saddened, and I wish you hadn't written everything to me so truthfully. I'm so upset. Yours truly, Fatima T." The reply came soon after. "My dearest, my true love, I have sincere affection and loyalty for you, which is why I wrote everything truthfully. Otherwise, I could have hidden it. I'm searching for a new place to stay. Don't worry, I will leave soon, and I will never look back at Asia's house again. It's the kind of compulsion that leads a person to sin, and I curse that compulsion. I would rather sleep on the street than stay in their house. Yours, your own Omer." After this incident, Amir continued to stay in their house for about a year and a half. During this time, this immoral woman fed my husband a lot of her husband's wealth. She told her husband that Amr was a very decent and obedient young man, and her husband treated Amr with respect and affection. However, Amr's conscience must have been reprimanding him. His soul was probably burdened with the weight of sin, but he didn't have to pay rent, and Asia was covering his educational expenses. One day, unexpectedly, her husband came home early. Ahmer was in his room, but the woman was wearing inappropriate clothing, which made her husband suspicious. He scolded her, saying, "Why are you wearing such clothes with a young man in the house?" Her husband's reprimands reached Amer's ears, and he became worried. he had a guilty conscience. The next day, he made an excuse to go to the village and went to stay with his classmate Ferris, who lived in a hostel and had been receiving my letters at his address. Amr explained the whole situation to Ferris, who told him, "Stay with me for a couple of days and I'll arrange accommodation for you." Together, they searched for a house, but the rent was very expensive, and they were asking for a high advance payment. Ferris then spoke to his aunt, whose large house was mostly empty, with only her and her daughter living there. They took pity on Almer as a poor student and offered him a room in their servant quarters. Their daughter, Rania, was a matric student but struggled with her studies. When the elderly woman saw that Amer was a decent and capable student who kept to himself, she offered to have him tutor her daughter, Rania, in exchange for a reasonable tutoring fee. Amer, who needed a part-time job, accepted the offer. In the evenings, he would tutor Rania in the drawing room. She was innocent and had not been affected by the world's ways. Her father had divorced her mother and remarried, leaving the house and money to Rania. Whenever she needed money, she would call her father, who would send it to her. They had no shortage of money. When Amr came to the village, he apologized for his past mistake and promised not to repeat it. I forgave him with an open heart because he hadn't hidden anything from me. He could have easily concealed it. I was very happy with Amr because he never did anything for me. Now Amr was in his first year of BA, and his new residence was at Mrs. Colshare's house, where he not only taught their daughter but also helped with other tasks. For instance, he drove their car wherever they needed. He had learned how to drive as well. Unfortunately, what I had feared eventually happened. Rania slowly became attracted to my husband, thinking he was unmarried. Amr had never mentioned that he was married. Instead, he had presented himself as a student. He was a well-mannered, refined, and disciplined 20-year-old from a village near Faisalabad. He was good-looking, with fair skin, and seemed to lack no qualities. He was the perfect image of what any girl could desire. He had been tutoring Rania for a year and a half, but he never said anything inappropriate. Rania praised the young man's honesty to her mother. The mother also kept a close watch on Amr. Indeed, she had never seen a more virtuous and decent young man, someone who observed fasting and prayer, remained focused on his studies, and kept to his work. Whenever the mother and daughter had some outside work, Amer would rush to fulfill their orders. With such qualities, Amer had won their hearts. When Rania took her exams, her mother became concerned about her marriage. Rania then expressed to her mother that she liked Amer and wanted to marry him. The woman told Amer, "My daughter likes you, and I also like you. I want you to marry her. If you're willing, this house and all its belongings belong to my daughter. You're a poor young man, and I can arrange a good job for you. The biggest problem poor men face is finding a way to settle down." Amer's circumstances, however, made him vulnerable. Although he wasn't a bad person and was not driven by lust, the pressures of life began to weaken his resolve. In times of poverty, when others were taking care of his expenses, his faith began to weaken. He thought that with part-time work, he wouldn't earn enough for rent, food, and educational expenses, while everything here was free. So, the temptation got the better of him. The allure of the mansion and the material wealth gripped him, just like a magnet pulls iron. He thought that if he married Rania, his life would be set, and later he could ask for my forgiveness. And if she didn't accept, he could divorce her without any issue. In this temptation, he was willing to sacrifice his love, ready to marry Rania. He had convinced himself of this, so a few friends, including Ferris, the same one who received my letters, were involved in arranging the wedding. Ferris, however, had read some of my letters and realized the love between my husband and me. Grateful for this, he quietly informed Rania's mother that Amer was married, and his wife was waiting for him in the village. He advised her to visit the village before giving her daughter's hand to an unknown man, as marrying her off without investigation would be a mistake. When Rania's mother questioned Amer and insisted on going to the village, he became nervous. At that moment, I arrived with my father at the address Ferris had given me, and we went to the mansion where Amer was staying. The elderly woman invited us in and asked the reason for our visit. I told her Amer is my husband, and I'm here to give him permission for a second marriage with your daughter so that he can marry her without fear and become a house husband. Hearing this, the woman was shocked. She was taken aback and then realized what had happened. She called Amer and told him, "Pack your things. Your wife and father-in-law are here to take you. You're going with them, and don't come back here or contact us again. You deceived us by pretending to be unmarried. I never imagined you could be this kind of person. It was known that this virtuous woman had not dishonored Amer too much, or else he would have been severely reprimanded. The truth was, Amer had never looked at their daughter inappropriately, nor had he entangled her in any romantic games. It was this mother and daughter who had made the offer of marriage to him. However, Amer had accepted this offer for reasons of his own, which only he knew. He used to tell me that he was trying to connect with the rich to make us wealthy. Anyway, I remained upset for a while, but eventually I forgave him. After all, being an Eastern woman, I was thankful that today we are living a happy life. All praise be to Allah that Amer never made such a mistake again. Today I think about the time when Amer was ready to marry Rania, and I wonder where his love for me went, when he was tempted by greed. It is true that men are unpredictable, and they can show their true colors at any time. But I also regret my blind trust in him. I was foolish to trust my husband so completely.